attention to the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Freefall. Hi everyone, this is Andy Steele back again for another show. Today the guest is going to be Laila Selk, a former firefighter and a member of AE 9/11 Truth Verifications team. We're going to talk about the evidence from her perspective, and we're going to illuminate the audience a little bit on what AE 9/11 Truth does to verify its experts and petition signers in general. Plus, we're going to have the latest in 9/11 related news, and I'll be carrying on a theme I brought up last week on the show. That's the reality that the Second American Revolution is on, and you are all a part of it. Don't go anywhere. This show is going to be interesting, to say the least. Now, before we move any further, as you know, the show is about 9/11 Truth with a focus on the science. And, of course, I select my guests out there from the countless people who are doing what they can to keep this fact that the Twin Towers and World Trade Center 7 were brought down in a controlled demolition on 9/11 from being swept under the rug by our government and media system, which is interested only in keeping Americans asleep. This issue has been blown wide open, and the evidence has been laid out. All that keeps America from accepting the truth are the evidence's implications. Folks, you are not alone, all right? You are not powerless against those who perpetrated the crime and who continue to hide it. And you can do a lot, all right, either by yourself, as some people do, or, better yet, when you join a team. And Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth is the organization you need to lend your talents and your energy to in this important fight for America's future. And don't let the murky waters of almost 12 years cloud the fact that people died on 9/11 and continued to die as a result of 9/11. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, they were punished simply for going to work that day because somebody somewhere made a conscious choice to pull the buildings and bring them crashing down with all of those lives inside just for a chilling effect on America's psyche. You can't be afraid of speaking out and doing whatever you can to let the truth be known, acknowledged, and for the true perpetrators of this crime to be found and for justice to be served. And great things happen when people get organized, and volunteering with AE 9/11 Truth is the way to be a part of a massive effort and to multiply your personal impact. Believe me, I know. And you know, folks, with respect to this, I want to highlight a point here. And first let me say or explain that something I like to do to pass the time when I'm not doing 9/11 Truth work or running my other websites is to listen to lectures on the internet. Just basic talks from people like you would hear in college, except you don't have to write a paper on what they say or you don't have to take a test. You just get to listen to it. It's a pleasure. And to me, most times, I'd rather sit and listen to an educated person talk about a subject that they know a lot about than watch some brainless movie or TV show. That's just how I am now at 34 years old. And if you're like that too, there's a number of places you can go to find interesting lectures on the net. And I found that one of the best resources is Yale University's webpage. They got entire courses online there, and basically you just pick a course, and it's broken up by lecture by lecture videos of the professors there teaching the class for an entire semester, and you get to sit in and watch it through the camera eye as if you're one of the students in the class. All right, it's almost as good as going to Yale, except you don't have to pay all the debt afterwards. But you can watch these lectures on video on the site, or you can download them to your MP3 player. That's what I do because I listen to it while I work. But one course on Yale's site that I've been listening to lately is taught by Professor Joanne Freeman. And it focuses on the American Revolution, and it covers the whole event with this level of honesty and detail you really can't get from some cheesy one-hour TV show, like on the History Channel. All right, she covers the revolution from both sides, the patriots and Tories alike. She's got a great sense of humor. It's been great to listen to this, and I recommend people listen to this lecture series if they can, if they have time for it. But a point in her lectures is this: the American Revolution itself wasn't really the war. All right, the war was just a consequence of the revolution. And let me explain how I interpret that. All right, the actual revolution itself was the awakening, the pushback, the change in ideas, all right, the courage of people to speak out. The war resulted, of course, because Britain wasn't going to let go of its colonies, but again, that in itself was something that manifested because of the revolution that came from the people. And I raised this point here on this show because I said it last week, and I'm going to say it again. We, right now, in the 21st century, are in another American Revolution. All right, whenever anyone talks about this fact, including myself, they're always quick to state that this is a revolution of ideas and words and not violence. But really, when you look at the word revolution, quote unquote, through the context that I just described, then there shouldn't have to be any clarification needed. All right, with more and more people speaking out about what really brought down the Twin Towers and Building 7 on 9/11, with more people resisting the outcomes of 9/11, we are in a growing revolution. And we have been for years. And that's a good thing, all right? It's a necessary thing. We're people who know the truth, and we are overthrowing a lie that's been used against us, and we don't care about the sour faces of politicians who don't want to do their jobs and address the evidence. We don't care about the whiny media people pretending to be journalists, these people who think that asking a government person a question and getting a one-sentence answer and then moving on from the issue somehow equates to investigative reporting. All right? Those people are more and more becoming irrelevant as they prove themselves irrelevant. And you've seen the videos of politicians being asked questions about the scientific evidence that AE 9/11 Truth lays out. And they give either these rambling diatribes that don't address the question, or they just claim it's outrageous to ask the question and they don't address the evidence. That's what they do, all right? And that smoke blowing only works for so long. Now here, nearly 12 years later, the emotion's worn down and people are watching these answers and they're scratching their heads, all right? And those who are already awake to this info know that we, the people, are on our own, and that if justice is going to come on this issue, then it needs to be initiated by us. We are tearing down the old establishment, but we're doing it in a way that is the most effective, simply by shining a light in the eyes of those folks who are paid to keep the barn door closed on this issue. So you need to keep speaking out. You need to keep asking the questions whenever you can, and you need to volunteer with AE 9/11 Truth. So go to AE911truth.org right now. Do that and lend whatever you can to this fight. Just click the volunteer tab on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, I want to let everyone know, too, that the official Rethink 9/11 campaign video is up at rethink911.org, and this is the time to start thinking about what you're going to do this September 11th, all right? How are you going to tell your community about the scientific truth of what happened on 9/11? And there's many ways. Maybe you get a billboard. Maybe you buy an ad in the newspaper. All right? So, you need to start thinking about that now. Go to rethink911.org to find out what the campaign is about, and give yourself plenty of time to figure out what you're going to do and how you do it. Planning is everything. This is another thing I know from experience. When you want to be successful, you meticulously plan down to every detail. And that's not to scare people off. That's just to tell you that, you plan ahead. Get ahead of the issue and make a big impact. This is going to be a tremendous event for the world, all right, waking people up and having a picture of Building 7 in the Times Square of New York City. That's an amazing thing. It shows you how far we've come, and we've only got more ground to cover, and we are going there fast. This movement is getting bigger and bigger. And I just want to make a quick announcement here. On Saturday, July the 13th, Richard Gage and Ken Jenkins will be speaking at the PCC Sylvania Performing Arts Center. That's in Portland, Oregon. The event is called 9/11, What Happened and Why It Matters. Now, if you're listening to this program's first airing on No Lies Radio, that's still 2 days away for you. So you can go to brownpapertickets.com and buy the tickets there. General admission is $10. If you got the student discount, that makes it $5. Now, if you're listening to this program in the archives, obviously this event has already happened. It's in the past for you. However, if you're interested in funding and hosting an AE 9/11 Truth presentation in your city, then you can just go to AE911truth.org andysteele.org and hit the Contact Us form on the website and make sure you select presentations in the subject area field and fill it out. And what better way to bring the truth to your area than to have a presentation? Think about the media coverage that would happen as a result. You can send out a press release to all your local newspapers, to all your local TV stations, and tell them, hey, this guy, this architect, Richard Gage, is challenging the official story about what really happened in the buildings in New York on September 11th. But not only is Richard Gage doing it, nearly 2,000 architects and engineers he represents also are challenging. But what better way to get people talking about what really happened to the buildings than to have a presentation in your area? And people will come. People will listen. People are interested in this subject. They are ready to have their eyes open. Okay, so you need to be the leader, and you need to be the person that brings this information to your community and wakes everyone up. So again, go to ae911truth.org, select the Contact Us form, and make sure you put presentations in the subject area field. Now, I also wanted to talk quickly about this. Wayne Costi, who I've had on the show several times, has been on a mission to get the film Experts Speak Out into public libraries. And there's an article up at ae911truth.org that explains this, and it quotes Wayne, who says in the article, "We know the public expects libraries to have a wide diversity of opinions and viewpoints. However, we also know that public libraries rely on reviews from a limited universe of publications when making their decision to include materials into their circulating quote-unquote mainstream media reviews extolling the value of scientific evidence-based material like AE911 Truth's groundbreaking documentaries. Many libraries have overlooked or even given away Experts Speak Out instead of adding it to their selection." So Wayne and other representatives of AE911 Truth set up a booth at the 2013 American Library Association Conference in Chicago, and that ran from June 28th to July the 1st. And maybe I'll get Wayne back on in the near future to talk about this. And this is a very important outreach if you think about it, folks. All right, and I'm going to quote Kurt Vonnegut, the late Kurt Vonnegut, in his book, Man Without a Country. This is what he wrote. "And on the subject of burning books, I want to congratulate librarians, not famous for their physical strength or their powerful political connections or their great wealth, who all over this country have staunchly resisted anti-democratic bullies who have tried to remove certain books from their shelves and have refused to reveal to Thought Police the names of persons who have checked out those titles. So the America I love still exists, if not in the White House or the Supreme Court or the Senate or the House of Representatives or the media. The America I love still exists at the front desk of our public libraries." And folks, libraries are a great place to spread this kind of info. Now, I'm not going to say that all librarians are above the biases created by the media against certain topics, but just like C-SPAN, these public libraries claim to be some kind of platform available to the community so that all voices can be heard. And that front is really all you need, because if they refuse to let you have that platform, they got to come up with some logical reason for not letting you have it, which honestly most times they can't, so they won't. All right, many libraries have rooms you can sign out for a day and hold screenings of movies like 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. All right, Wayne's trying to get the libraries to carry that movie on their shelves, and he needs your help to do that. So if you got time, go to your library, tell them to carry AE911 Truth films. Okay, and if you have extra copies of them, donate them. Say, I want other people to see this. Okay, what we're going to do right now is what we do most weeks. We're going to take about 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and everybody who has died in the post-9/11 world. So we're going to take those 10 seconds right now. And that is 10 seconds. Okay, my guest this week is Laila Selk. She graduated from the College of San Mateo, California in 1984 with an associate's degree in fire science and received an emergency medical technician certification in 1984 as well. She was hired by the Palo Alto Fire Department in September of 1984 and retired in September of 1996, having served 10 of those years on the line as a firefighter. She was also a volunteer with the Kings Mountain Fire Brigade from 1982 to 1991. Her on-the-job training includes high-rise firefighting, and this month, if you go to AE911truth.org, you'll see there's an article about her and her efforts. She's also on the AE 911 Truth verification team. Welcome, Layla.
Thank you.
So, tell us, about your career. I think it's amazing. So you have experience fighting high-rise fires. I want to hear about that. And I also want to know, being a firefighter, obviously this event that we talk about every week on this show, affects your profession greatly. A number of firefighters died that day. Quick story, I remember on 9/11 them interviewing a firefighter after the first tower had fallen and he was going back into the building. And they were asking him, you're going back in, and I'm paraphrasing what he said. I remember the look in his eyes, and it almost seemed like he was convincing himself to go back in, but he was saying, I got brother officers that might be trapped, I have to go in. And it looked like he wasn't even talking to the reporter, it looked like he was talking to himself, and he went back in. I don't know what happened to him, he may have died, he may not have, but just the courage of people who risk their own lives like yourself, I have tremendous respect for. So, talk about yourself, and also what woke you up to the controlled demolition evidence and prompted you to take action to speak out about it?
Yeah, well, I started being a volunteer firefighter, and then the firefighters and the volunteers recommended or suggested that I become a career firefighter, and I thought, well, okay, why not? So I started that. So getting into 9/11, I have a good friend who's a retired lieutenant in the FDNY, and I knew that she was featured in a book, and the book is called Women at Ground Zero, Stories of Courage and Compassion by Susan Hagen and Mary Karuba. I began reading this book in late 2003, and as I read the stories, these are verbatim stories of the women firefighters. As you know, the media likes to portray the fire department as this strong white male. It is really a male bastion, a strong white male place, and that's all they talked about was a fireman this, a fireman that, and there were many women on the job. So 2 women from California flew out to New York to find these women first responders and interview them. They did so and put it in this book. So as I'm reading along these women, some of them are military trained in the use of explosives. They were talking about their injuries. They talked about explosions. They went into great detail to describe the atmosphere, how it would get all dark and silent, and then all of a sudden there would be a huge explosion and they would get blown. One woman was blown out of her shoes completely across the street from the trade center onto a grassy area. She was wearing a Kevlar helmet. A chunk of cement hit the back of her helmet, cracked it in half, and that hunk of cement embedded in her skull. She also had glass embedded in her back, in between her shoulder blades. It was heart-wrenching to read these stories and their injuries. All of these people thought they were going to die that day. I can't tell you how many of the stories included explosions. Like I said, some of these people are military trained. They know what an explosion sounds like, so I trust what they had to say. So that led me to that. Somebody gave me loose change, and I watched that. Some friends of ours took us to go see Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11, and I just sat and thought about it for myself, and then I just started doing internet research and looking more and more at it. I went for quite a few years before I discovered AE 9/11 Truth. Because it was such a traumatic discovery for me, I got very scared, and I sort of freaked out about it. It was very horrible. Nobody wanted to hear what I had to say, even though I tried to share it with several people around me, and I became isolated from my friends and family over researching this incident. Here I am, a firefighter trained in firefighting, and they still didn't want to hear it. So anyway, I got to thinking more about the firefighting aspect of it. When I learned about 9/11 truth, I looked at the physics and I thought, well, there's my answer. This is what I can explain to people. So I've turned from the emotional side to the physics only. I ask people to put their emotions aside and look at just the physics, look at the forensic evidence, and if you know what gravity can and cannot do, it's pretty obvious if you're willing to admit that something really is amiss here. Now, the other thing I'd like people to know is that high-rises are equipped with standpipes and sprinklers. And the standpipes carry water from the ground all the way up to the top of the buildings. Firefighters carry hose packs on their shoulders, go up to the floor of the fire, and hook up to a spigot, if you will, and fight the fire from that floor. That is exactly what a crew was doing up on the 78th floor, I believe it was. They were going to knock down some of the pockets of fire that they had found and bring the people down. These buildings were built to withstand multiple plane impacts, according to the people who designed them. The fire department has got high-rise fire plans. They've got high-rise fire. They do drills, just like I did in Palo Alto. The highest building we had was 15 stories, but we still drilled for high-rise fire drill because an aerial ladder truck will only reach 7 floors. So we do the same thing everywhere. It's the same no matter where you are, big city, small city, a high-rise fire plan. There's a standard procedure for it. They followed that. The other thing they did was the command center. They set up the command center in the lobby of the building. We don't set up a command center in a place where we are going to endanger ourselves. There would have been no reason, had they thought the buildings were going to come down that day, to set up in the lobby. They would have set up elsewhere where they would have been safe. Those buildings never should have come down. The firefighters knew that. That's why they sent people up there to rescue the others. That's why they set up the command center in there. The buildings should have stood.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting to listen to you talking about this. A number of questions that come up for me. First of all, this book you cited, I'm going to ask you to repeat the title, and I'm going to ask you also, now this was not approaching 9/11 from a 9/11 truth angle, correct? It was just an account of these women that were at Ground Zero and telling their stories, but at the same time they're reporting these explosions, even though it doesn't have the purpose of trying to expose that there was something else to 9/11 that was than what we were told, correct?
Absolutely, that's correct. They're just exposing the stories, the women's accounts of what happened that day. In fact, I even approached both of the authors about 9/11 truth, and they would not talk to me about it.
Amazing. What's the name of the book?
Women at Ground Zero by Susan Hagen, Hagen, and Mary Karuba, Carouba.
Okay, Women at Ground Zero. That's very interesting. Now, also, too, you were talking about, you've had experience fighting high-rise fires during your career. So I want to ask, in reflecting on Building 7, how many high-rises that have caught on fire have fallen straight down symmetrically because of a random fire breaking out?
None. Fire cannot do that. Fire is progressive, which means it will burn for about 20 minutes in one area. After 20 minutes, the fuel is burned up, and it has to move on. If it doesn't have any more fuel to burn, it'll go out. So there was plenty of fuel in that building, but it will only stay there for a good 20 minutes, and then it turns to ash. When you have ash doesn't burn. That's, I hope you get that. What we saw was a catastrophic 6.5 second collapse. Fire doesn't do that. If fire could do that, I don't believe any person would want to become a firefighter. I know I wouldn't.
Well, that's true, and I wouldn't want to work in an office building or a high-rise office building either. I'd be afraid a fire would break out and the whole building would come crashing out on my head, and I'd only have to worry about getting out of the building to get away from choking on the smoke, but I got to worry about the whole thing falling down on me. They build buildings so that they don't do this. This is why we have building codes, folks, okay? This is why they make them steel-framed high-rises, so they're built to last. And it's interesting, too, you mentioned about the firefighter who is right on the radio saying, we got 2 isolated pockets of fire. We can knock it down. I forgot how many lines he said. Now, I'm sure you've heard that radio transmission. And these people know what they're talking about when they go in there. I mean, these are some of the most experienced firefighters in the world. These are New York City firefighters who are dealing with a fire probably just about every single day there. They know what they're talking about. It's just absolutely amazing that even with the 118 eyewitness accounts from firefighters, first responders, witnessing explosions, one of the most famous videos documenting explosions are the firefighters at the station saying, floor by floor, they just started popping out, boom, 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 boom. It looked like there were detonators in there, taking them out. These are people that know what they're talking about, folks, and we're talking to somebody that knows what she's talking about also. Now, you talked about this being a very isolating feeling. I guess I want to ask, when you start talking to other firefighters, well, first, how long did it take you to start talking to other firefighters, and what's been the response of them when you bring up this topic?
I am so glad you asked that. It took me quite a while. I did not go back to my old fire department and talk to my firefighters right away about it. I waited until I was well-versed in the AE 9/11 information, and I brought that to them. I could find only a handful of my old coworkers, not the new ones, because remember, I've been gone now for 18 years. So this was just a couple of years ago I went back, and I could only find about a handful of my old coworkers who would look at it, who were interested, maybe 1 or 2 or 5 of the new people. Now, this is out of a department of 120 men. Who were interested. Some of the new people just wouldn't listen didn't want to listen. One of them said, I want to believe that my government would not do this, therefore I'm not going to look at it. I could not interest our union president. I couldn't interest the fire marshal. I couldn't interest many people. I did have one person tell me that if they looked at it, they knew it would be a death sentence. And I take that to mean that it's dangerous to look at this information. So I can only assume that these people were afraid of it. I don't know what else to assume.
Well, it's funny you say that, and we often refer to anybody with any kind of authority, and there's varying levels of authority, obviously, in our country, but anybody with any kind of authority, we call them people in power. But then, you ask them about this topic, and it really calls into question whether or not these people are in power or whether they're empowered, because, their fear of looking at this evidence, whether it be their fear for their career or maybe even at a more extreme level, maybe they fear for their lives, shows that they really don't hold power. All right, they're just towing a company line, trying to maintain a position, but them being in that position is based on whether or not they avoid controversy. And this is how events like 9/11 are pulled off. It's not even so much a conspiracy of all of these people nationwide being in on it. It's more of a conspiracy of fear. It's people being afraid of jeopardizing what it is their comfortable existence and their livelihoods, not wanting to be the first one to throw a stone at the giant. Now let's listen to a short clip of Eric Lawyer, another firefighter, talking about the so-called 9/11 investigation.
Standards for an investigation. That's what all of us are asking for, an investigation that follows national standards and holds people accountable. This manual right here, just so you can see it, is what we call the kind of the Fire Investigation 101. This is the most basic fire investigation manual there. This is for the 2001 edition. This is what should have been referred to, at least. It doesn't have to be followed exactly, but it should have been used as a guideline for the investigation. I'm just going to cover a few of the things that are in here. So NIST violated, and the initial investigators that did not protect the scene violated the most basic of the guidelines. And I'm going to cover 5 of them here. One is the NFPA 9.3.6. It covers spoliation of evidence. What it reads is, once evidence has been removed from the scene, it should be maintained and not destroyed or altered until the investigation is complete. The steel was melted down prior to the investigation. We know that from their own admission. This is no conspiracy theory stuff. 19.2.4, exotic accelerants. If on the scene you find melted steel or concrete, you should consider the use of exotic accelerants. And they specifically specifically say in the manual, thermite mixtures produce exceedingly hot fires that can account for melted steel and concrete. It also says they leave residues that can be tested for visually and chemically identifiable. Again, they did not test for it. And just put in perspective, on a routine house fire, if we suspect even the slightest use of an accelerant, we're going to test for it when there's no fatalities, when there's very little property damage. So to not do it on this, there is absolutely no excuse. I can't drive that point home enough. 18.15 is analyze fuel source. All available fuel sources should be considered and eliminated until one fuel can be identified as meeting all the physical damage criteria. For example, if you find pulverized concrete, which we all know there was in all three buildings, there was pulverized concrete, the only fuels that can create seeded explosions should be considered. So they shouldn't be considering fires. They shouldn't be doing that. It doesn't account for pulverized concrete. They should only be considering exotic accelerants and explosives. 19.4.8.2.6, extremism. The terrorist may include fire as but one of a variety of weapons along with explosives used in furthering his or her goal. We know they used them in '93. Why would we not test for them now? There was reports that day, multiple reports, which I'll get into here in a second. So they could have put them in the basement. How do we know that unless we test for it? I mean, even if it is the terrorists that they claim they are, we need to test this. 14.3, preservation of the fire scene and physical evidence. We find the following. The cause of a fire explosion is not known until near the end of the investigation. The entire fire scene should be considered physical evidence and should be protected and preserved. It's just over and over. There's so many. You can go to our website, the Firefighters for 9/11 Truth. We have many more of these actual chapters that cover what they should have done that they did not do. So now, by their own admission, in all three building collapses, NIST refused to physically test, like Dr. Stephen Jones did, for explosives. This is just unbelievable.
Now, you heard that, and usually through any kind of profession, there's some kind of recourse that somebody can fall back on to be able to report fraud, be able to report problems that they see. Do you know of any agencies anywhere that a firefighter can go to as recourse to raise the red flag on this issue and say, hey, look, we have a problem here?
No, that's a very good question. I don't, because that's never come up before.
Seems like that should be something that exists. That there could be fraud in an fire investigation. Certainly any profession can be corrupted, and certainly there could be instances that could come up in terms of not just the World Trade Center, but any building that catches on fire. There should be some kind of whistleblowing agency for firefighters. And, I don't know of anything like that. And certainly if the audience knows about something like that, they can send me an email at freefall911truth@gmail.com and let me know. But I don't see that.
Wouldn't that be kind of akin to FBI whistleblowers? Where do they go to blow the whistle? Sidell Edmonds would be a good example of that.
Exactly. And what I think that organizations like Firefighters for 9/11 Truth should consider is their own training for firefighters on what to do in the event that they're in a situation like 9/11. Now, whether or not it would be, being in a burning building and then somebody literally, quote-unquote, pulls the building and brings it down on them, whatever, or if it's something new that comes up, there should be some kind of training for firefighters to let them know that, hey, you might be on your own here. And I'll refer back to that firefighter I was talking about at the beginning of the program. And I don't want to speculate on what was going on in his head, just what I perceived from the look in his eyes, but he looked shocked that the first building had fallen down. And, I could see it and I could hear it in his voice. And he had to go get his men out of the building. And so there ought to be some kind of training that says, hey, look, if you're in a situation, you're in a building that you're hearing explosions when you shouldn't be, this is what you should do. And I don't know what you should do in that situation. Firefighters should write it, but it would be interesting to see some kind of curriculum or something like that provided for them, given that the situation we're in and the times we're living in this country. Now, I want to switch gears here and talk about what you're doing with AE 9/11 Truth right now. It's been very instrumental, and helpful on the verifications team. So can you talk about what the verifications team is, and what do you do on that team?
Oh, sure. Well, when somebody signs our petition, it goes into a program, and we receive notification, and then the architects and engineers are verified by others on our team, and I verify everyone else. anywhere from homemakers to physicists to retired Army generals. I can't tell you the variety of people that we've had from all around the world. We verify people. And what we do is we do a Google search of their email, 2 Google searches of their email address. We search on a site, the JREF Foundation. We search their name, and then we also just do a general Google search. Many of these people I find on Facebook, and I'll look at their Facebook page just to see, what's about them. And then we read their bio and statement, make any kind of corrections that need to be made, spelling corrections, I mean, and send them a thank you note, ask them to support us further if they want to, and we're on their way.
Now, you say you don't verify the architects and engineers. Do you know anything about the process that goes into verifying those groups?
I know a little bit about the process, and the reason I don't do it is because it's too confusing for me. What that means is that if somebody is degreed, there are certain credentials that we need to get from them. We need to get their diploma. We need to make sure that they have graduated from an accredited university. We need to make sure that they are who they say they are. We need to make sure that they also sign the petition. So we call each and every one of them, except the foreign ones. We only call the domestic architects and engineers. And we personally speak to them and ask them if they did in fact sign. So that is another part of verification. If they have a license, all we need to do is get their license number, and we can verify it through a service, national student clearing, or I think that's what it is. I might be getting a little bit of this mixed up. But basically, it's a more extensive search into the person.
And I want to just highlight how much time and care goes into verifying, that these people are actually who they say they are. If there wasn't a verifications team, if there wasn't a process, somebody could come up and say that, my name is George Bush, and I went to the University of Ishtar, and and put that in. So they obviously have to prevent fakes from coming up, and it is. I mean, they're very careful about this, and have even excluded people from what I've seen who may have a questionable degree or who haven't verified or provided a copy of it, things like this. So it's a very conservative process. Now, have you ever encountered anybody that's been with what you do and just ordinary people that you verify? Have you ever encountered anybody that's been like a fake petition signer?
Yes, absolutely, we have. In fact, one of our supporters alerted us to somebody who signed a petition in German that transcribed into Donald Duck. So that's another way they can trip us up. Many of these people give us names that are so fake that from the moment you see them, you just go, yeah, I don't think so. And I don't spend very much time on them at all. It's very touchy, who we're willing to allow on the petition, because we need to be seen as legitimate. And we can't have people attacking us for who is on our petition.
Right, and you know that they're going to. I mean, that's the thing, is that they can't face the evidence. So what they'll do is they'll look for any little crevice to wiggle into and cause a problem. They will look for any way to try to attack the messenger. And you see this when you ask questions, like I said earlier, of the politicians. You ask questions of the media. The first thing they'll do is they'll just marginalize it as a conspiracy theory. When you actually press them on the science, then they'll attack the messenger. They'll attack, you talk about it being the nanothermite in the dust, and it was a peer-reviewed paper. They'll talk about they'll attack the journal that it was peer-reviewed in. All right, anything to avoid the actual evidence itself. So this is why a job like yours is so important. We were talking about librarians earlier, and Kurt Vonnegut praising librarians for their work and for their courage for standing up against the government. But it's this kind of meticulous verifying work that is important to keep the legitimacy of names like AE 9/11 Truth pure. You're like a shield protecting the organization from these silly attacks.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I do have an answer to those who would say 9/11 Truth is a conspiracy theory. I would have to ask them in return, so do you feel that Newtonian physics is a conspiracy? Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about physics. We're talking about simple physics and gravity, and what is possible and what is impossible without extra help. And usually they either shut up or go on to something else.
Well, right. I mean, that's what we're facing, and it's the reason that this show exists. No one should have to be listening to me right now bringing you this information. You know, if we had a real media, if we had a real government, I don't even consider these people legitimate. I have no respect for them anymore. That's just the way it is. You know, we wouldn't need to be having this mass awakening, this alternative media movement taking place right now. And so you can present real facts to people, and they'll look at you and smile at you like you're a funny picture on the wall. And I'm not saying everybody, because I think a lot more people are waking up than most people know. I think that there's going to be some people that are just going to follow this government off of a cliff if they need to. They're going to stick to the official story no matter what, because they have so much invested in it. But I think the people who are on the fence are beginning to wake up, even if they're not speaking out about it, even if they want to remain aloof. They're beginning to realize that there is something wrong with the official story, and the AE 9/11 truth is right. The science is solid. The facts are spot on.
Yes, and Andy, to back that up, my proof is that people sign the petition every single day. Even if it's just a few people, at least people continue to sign. So that is saying that people are waking up.
Just to speak for the importance of a petition, I mean, people make petitions all the time. People have petitioned the White House for silly things before. Why is a petition like AE 9/11 Truth's petition so important in your opinion?
To let people know that we're serious and we continue to talk about this issue. It's by no means past. It's not a closed issue. There's no resolution to it whatsoever. We need to continue the conversation, and the petition shows that people want to continue the conversation. Like I said, if the people are willing to continue signing it, they want to keep talking about this so that they can go on with their lives and know what really happened.
Right, and I say this to the audience. You know, when I first started out back in, I would say 2006 was the year, and I started speaking out about the 9/11 truth evidence, I created a MySpace page for another website that I run, and I kind of hid behind that avatar for a few months just because I wanted to keep it separate from my normal life, but I came to the realization that that's not a route to go. That's not what we need to do as a movement and as individuals in the movement, because we need to stand behind our own words. So now I'm right out front. I'll tell you right to your face that at 9/11, the buildings in New York were brought down in a controlled demolition that day. All right, I'll say it proudly, because it is the truth. It's not that we're even clever or anything, it's that we're right. I mean, this is what happened that day. So, you know, these groups that hide behind an avatar or a Facebook avatar, these people that, you know, choose to remain anonymous while speaking out, you know, I appreciate that they're speaking out, but it's so much stronger if you do not have a secret identity. If you're out there in the front saying, hey, look, this is the way it is, and I'm putting my name next to it. And that's why I think this petition is so important, because here you have this list of brave people around the world speaking out, and not in just putting their names on it, not just putting, you know, Bill S., you know, with just their first name and their the first initial of their last name there, putting their full names on, and also providing a short statement of why they believe the evidence is true, is the most powerful signal to the establishment that people aren't buying this, that people are waking up, and that they are going to continue to push this issue right to the end, right until they admit that this is what happened that day.
I agree.
And I think that's why this petition is so important.
I fully agree, and I do appreciate, and I put a little postscript at the end of our welcome letter to some of our petition signers, especially the ones in the military. I always like to thank them for their service. And then the retired generals who have signed with us, I say, come on, get the rest of the rank to come and sign with us as well.
And can you talk a little bit about that some more? You have, you know, retired law enforcement, you have people in the military, and you, like you said, you have generals. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Actually, we have active duty military people signing with us. I have people from Oath Keepers. I have, police department, fire department, pilots, physicists, scientists of all kinds, biochemists, all kinds of people. You name the profession. I bet I've had it. I had a Catholic priest the other day sign a petition. Lots of spiritual people, lots of religious people, as a matter of fact, signed the petition. Just runs the gamut of professions. I believe there is no profile of a 9/11 truther.
Well, no, there isn't, and it's amazing that everybody from every walk of life, not just in the United States, but around the world, is starting to speak out about this. And I think it's important to highlight these groups of people, not that they're better than anybody else, but you see like the other side will try to use the military to attack anyone that speaks out about what really happened on 9/11, and they'll say, oh, it's disrespectful to our troops, and they give lip service to the soldiers, and they'll drag some guy out, during a football game who lost his legs in Iraq and have him standing there with some phony cowboy wannabe country singer giving him a plaque or something or a new car, and they consider this as serving the troops, as this is the troops are on our side. How dare you question 9/11? Look where we stand with the troops. Well, you really don't, okay? Because the troops, more and more of them are on our side. Most of them just are like regular people who are just trying to live their lives, but more of them now are questioning as they do their umpteenth tour through Afghanistan. They're sick of this situation, and they're looking at the event that initiated this now more clearly, and they're saying, hey, there is a problem with this, and that number is growing and growing and growing. And I think this is what the establishment is afraid of, is that the muscle of their empire, maintaining the post-9/11 world, is starting to turn.
I fully agree. I also want to make very clear that we have 9/11 victims' family members who are asking for a new investigation, who have signed the petition, the AE 9/11 petition with us. So it's not just people, it's also the family members, and that's the main reason I do this work. My son asked me one day, he says, Mom, why do you keep doing that? And I said, Connor, if it had happened to you, I would want somebody else to do it for you.
Right, and that's something that we don't stress enough on this show. I had Bob McIlvaine on once with Richard Gage and Deborah Voorhees to respond to Rachel Maddow when she did her whole propaganda attack on 9/11, controlled demolition evidence. She didn't really attack it. She just brought out Mark Bingham's mother. It didn't really cite any science, just said how dare people even ask questions. Well, we had Bob McIlvaine on to respond to that, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, I wish you'd say that to my face. I don't ask a 9/11 victim family members onto the show because I know how emotionally draining it is to be able to revisit this issue. They do support us. There's a number of them that are behind AE 9/11 Truth and the 9/11 Truth movement in general. And, we don't highlight that enough, because that's another thing that the other side will try to use. They don't do it as much anymore because it doesn't work, but one of the first things I heard somebody ever say to me is, that's disrespectful to the family members. Really? And a murder investigation is disrespectful? Questioning who was behind it is disrespectful? It's not even a question of who was behind it with what AE 9/11 Truth does, though. It's a question of what brought down the buildings, regardless of who you want to think was behind it. And if I had somebody that had died, if I had a family member that had died in that event, I would want to know as much about the event as possible. Now, that may be my personality. Some people may not want to look at it, but, that's a very important point to raise, is that victims' family members are standing with AE 9/11 Truth and calling this for this new investigation as well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you're right. Some of the victims' families don't want to look at it, and that's their prerogative. But I think the ones who do want to look at it need to push forward too, as well.
Right. Now, what can our listeners do to help you out? Obviously, we want to get as many petition signers as possible. What can people do to draw people to sign the petition? Not just look at the evidence, but put their name to the evidence.
Just ask for their support. Ask them if they feel that something was really amiss. Ask them to ask their elected representative to look further into it.
That's something that anybody can do. Now, I asked this of Richard Gage and Pam Senzi last week, and I think it's an important thing to ask, because, you've been at this for quite a while now, and it's very meticulous work. I would have trouble doing what you're doing. So something must keep you going. Something must give you hope. What do you see out there in the world in regards to this issue of 9/11 Truth that gives you the most hope and keeps you going?
The comments that the petition signers put on their statements, some of their comments. We also have a little box at the bottom that we don't share with the general public that people can let us know further if there's something special that they don't want to share with everybody, but want to share with us. These comments, I can't tell you, some of these people say I'm putting my life on hold until this issue is resolved. That just tugs at my heart. And I just feel compelled to continue doing it because I can't stop. There are so many people who say just about the same thing, that they care so deeply, that they feel like they care so deeply about it. That's what gives me hope. That's what keeps me going.
Right, and me too. And I listen to people like yourself. I talk to people every week. That keeps me going. And it's interesting what you say about people putting their life on hold. And I feel like I've done that to an extent. I mean, I still live it. I work. I do what I have to do to keep going. But as terrible as the situation is, as terrible as the reality of what we're facing is, I am thankful for the fact that I've been allowed to have my eyes opened to this. And I'm not trying to make this sound like some kind of spiritual, religious event, but what this did is it made me less naive. Because when 9/11 happened, I swallowed the official story because it was never introduced to me, the idea that I shouldn't do that. It's almost like asking somebody to imagine a color that you've never seen before, which is not a mixture of other colors. Your brain can't, because your brain has never, or your eyes have never seen it, your brain can't invent that, okay? You'd have to have some kind of experience with that color in order for your brain to process it. It's impossible. So, that was me in the very beginning. And so coming across this information purely by accident, folks, purely by, people talk about taking the red pill. I guess I did, but it basically kind of fell just into my hand or fell into my mouth inadvertently. It really woke me up, and I think has made me a better person, a wiser person, not a sucker. I mean, not subject to what the TV is telling me, not making me susceptible to other messages as well. And I think that it does improve your life, even if at first it's devastating and it completely destroys your worldview. Your worldview comes tumbling down in a controlled demolition as well, to use that metaphor. But to be reconstructed as a better person, this is what needs to happen. We need to destroy the old and rebuild it.
Yeah, I have to absolutely agree with everything you've just said, and that's exactly what happened to me. I've been looking at this issue for 10 years. I went through 6 years of depression about this issue before I found AE 9/11 Truth. I just every day I was angry. I threatened my marriage, my relationship with my husband and my son. It threatened my relationships with my friends and family. I did lose some friendships over this. I'm having to repair some other friendships because I let it consume me. I let the emotional part of it consume me. Once I found AE 9/11 Truth, and I could look at the physical evidence, I could put aside my emotions and just look at that. And from now on, that's all I will do. As soon as somebody wants to have an emotional argument about 9/11 Truth with me, I will just say, look, I cannot argue your emotions, but I can argue the physics. Let's talk about the physics instead.
And I say this to the audience, since this came up, my own personal advice is to look at it objectively, not just the evidence, obviously, but the situation. And I understand the emotional impact, but you got to think of yourself in terms of like the people. After Nazi Germany fell and the horrors of the Holocaust were revealed, there was people living in Germany who had to deal with the aftermath, had to deal with the reality that, hey, this is what our government did, and this is the situation we're in, and they picked up and they moved on, and they didn't look at it as a reflection of themselves. Okay. okay? So when you're thinking about this and you're thinking, oh, my God, the buildings were brought down to controlled demolition, all these people in government and media are lying to me, that's not you. Okay, you didn't do that. Even if you bought the official story, even if you vehemently attacked people like myself, like Layla here, you're still not guilty of the crime. You're a victim of this too. So that's a message that there's still salvation. You can still face it and acknowledge it and be okay. Okay, so it's not a reflection of you. And I want to be careful how I say this, but you got to kind of keep a sense of humor as well and separate yourself from the situation to an extent and just realize that, hey, this is what happened. But it's not a reflection on me as an American and not a reflection on America as a whole either, because, there's different kinds of America. There's the America of people like Layla here, and there's the America of the people that are in power. And their America does not reflect ours. So we got to look at ourselves, and I was talking about revolution in the beginning of the show. We have to look at ourselves as the new America, as the real America, struggling to break through, break our bondage, break the chains that are keeping us from exposing this and moving on with our lives. We are the real America trying to break free and reclaim our place as the real leaders of this country.
I would have to agree again. Everything you just said echoes my thoughts as well.
Absolutely. And, and I think that's a point that we need to make, and I've tried to talk about it on the show before, is that we need to support each other. We need to have forums like this where we can back each other up and let each other know, in terms of like what you just talked about, the emotional issues that come up with awakening to this. And I think that is the main barrier to getting this exposed, is that, the case has been proven. You can't have 8 stories just miraculously disappear from the fall of a building while it's coming down. Okay, the physics proves it, but the point is getting people to pay attention to it, to look at it, and it's that emotional wall. And I think I found ways to get past that. I mean, some of it's using humor, some of it is just talking to people frankly and pointing out that it's okay. It's okay to acknowledge this. Even if you bought the official story hook, line, and sinker. Look, folks, I did. I got an email a few days after the event happened and from a friend, and I kind of just dismissed it kind of patronizingly to this friend, and said, oh, these people are being ridiculous. And I didn't think about it for years later, okay? It's okay to have been wrong. It's okay that you bought the official story as long as you awaken to the reality of what happened and the evidence that these were a controlled demolition. As long as you acknowledge that, it doesn't matter who you were before. What matters is who you are now. And you can't look at these people in charge and these smiling faces on TV, these politicians, these media people, as a reflection of you. You are bigger than that. You are bigger than the controlled demolition of the buildings. You're bigger than the lie, and we are fighting to break free, and we will break free, and this truth will be known by everyone, and we will put this horrible moment of history behind us. Layla, do you have any last words before we wrap up the show?
No, I really don't. I think I've said everything that I wanted to say.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on 9/11 Freefall. Folks, we are out of time. Remember, you can listen to this program every Thursday night at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.